Welcome back. This is our Afterthoughts segment that is only being seen on our website. This is where we have a little more additional time to talk with our guest about the issues that we were involved with earlier on the show. Today with us is David Shaw, founder and executive chairman of Icaria Biopharmaceuticals Company and the founder and retired CEO of IDEX, among many other things, in Nation. One of the questions I wanted to ask, because I thought it was a good question, people asked me to ask this too, was when they look at your bio, the fact that you started at such a young age and really were able to find those things that were important and start a major business at a young age. What's your advice to that kind of young entrepreneur? We understand kind of where the established entrepreneur, they're always looking, once they've had some successes, but
right.
What does that new 30-year-old person need to know to be able to do what you did?
Yeah, I think the most important advice is surround yourself with great people.
Okay.
Great advisors, great team.
So is that the old sage wisdom, that kind of thing? Or?
It can be both,
Okay.
and I think diversity, to that point, probably is a very important thing. But you want in any business, any entrepreneurial business, it's a great adventure, and you don't know what you don't know. You can write a great business plan and so forth, but if it's a bold new plan, and great entrepreneurial plans are, you're going to run into lots of interesting things, and not unlike great athletes who sort of do this cybernetics thing and go through a lot of mental gymnastics about what is the race course going to look like before I actually ski it or run it or whatever. I think for a entrepreneur, you want to go through those mental gymnastics with a great team and try to anticipate all the things that you might run into, because it's very, very difficult to build a great business. And so the better advisors and the better team you can get, the better partners you'll have in stress testing your ideas and being sure that by the time you actually are running your business and you run into those difficult points, hopefully you will have thought through and anticipated those issues and be successful in overcoming them.
It's interesting in talking to you. What I hear a lot, it's interesting. You use superlatives a lot. The best team, best advisors. Look for that #1 market share. So, sounds like, and if a great company. It sounds like the key is setting the bar pretty high.
You see business plans and you talk to people who maybe are going to take a small share of a big market,
right,
or going to develop a business plan that's pretty interesting of some kind, and
but not bold.
But not bold, and
yeah.
It's hard to attract really good people to those businesses. It's hard to attract capital to those businesses. It's hard to have a good value creation for those businesses. And in my opinion, it all needs to be aimed at A+.
Can we really do biotech in Maine? You did, IDEX, we have Jackson Labs, but can those really grow and exist here? And can we have kind of that spin-off smaller businesses around them that would be so great for creating those high-wage, knowledge-based jobs?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, back in my late 20s, I was mid and late 20s. I actually worked in state government, and I wondered about things like that. And in a way, IDEX was an experiment for me, having been a public policy guy back then. I wondered about that, and then IDEX was an example of just saying, well, let's just try it and see. I don't have a science background, although I've been involved in science-based companies, and I think IDEX is an example, Jackson Laboratory is an example, and there are certainly plenty of other examples where great companies are built in places other than the major centers. But it's more difficult. It's much easier to build a biotech company in Boston or the Bay Area than it is to build it in an outlying area. I can tell you that when I first got involved in Jackson Laboratories, just to change from IDEX a little bit, Jackson Laboratories in the mid to late 80s was a $25 million annual budget operation. Today it's somewhere between $150 and $200 million a year. I was the chair of the laboratory during a big part of those growth years, and if there's a question about whether you can recruit great scientists, great molecular biologists, geneticists, immunologists, and the rest of the talent that you need to go from a staff of 300 people to 1,500 or 2,000 people, the answer is yes.
One more kind of state policy question about business. Coming up on a gubernatorial election year, they're starting to line up already on both sides of the aisle. It's going to be an open seat, so we're going to have lots of competition for this, which is a good thing. Yeah. What would you advise all those candidates, those would-be candidates out there thinking about becoming governor, if you could advise them about making changes or not, about improving the business climate in Maine, how important, or how to recruit businesses, or just business in general in Maine?
Focus on a very narrow range, but I think maybe the most important issue, from my point of view, is again investing in people. It's the theme that we've already talked about, all the way up through the education chain. And I'll refer to the organizations we've already talked about. One of the 3 core missions of the Jackson Laboratory is training and education, and it does a lot of that. IDEX has done a lot of training and education, particularly in science and math. And I think that nothing is more important to the future of the state, our economy, or to the businesses in it than investing in people to be sure that they have the key skills to move ahead. And I can say that IDEX was a beneficiary of some key education programs related to immunology and computer science and medical technology training and so forth.
Let's talk about Icaria. Tell me about that company and how that came to be and what you hope to see with that. It's called both pharmaceutical, biopharmaceutical, and biotherapeutics. Tell me about that.
Well, thanks for asking about Icaria. That's where I've spent an awful lot of time in the last couple of years.
Like 2007 is when you started that venture?
Well, the old Icaria, the original Icaria, actually goes back 2 years earlier, and I'll tell the quick story of the founding. I met. I have a daughter who's getting a PhD at the University of Washington in behavioral genetics. I was out visiting her, and I met a scientist in the same institution who was doing some fascinating work on metabolic flexibility and what you might call hibernation. He was looking at the limits of survivability by putting mammals, including mice, in lower and lower oxygen environments where you would normally die, and he was able to make them survive. And the key to that survival was hydrogen sulfide. So hydrogen sulfide in gas form at that time seemed to be at the cellular level creating a metabolic state in these animals. So we formed a company around this whole concept that maybe instead of giving oxygen to people when they're in an extreme condition, like you often do with stroke or heart attacks and so forth, maybe what you need to do is instead of giving them oxygen, you need to turn down their oxygen demand. And you might do that by giving them hydrogen sulfide. So we created this company as a critical care company. And then when we only had 10 employees, we did a lot of looking around to see who else was working on therapeutics in the form of gas, which is very unusual. And there's only one FDA-approved drug in the form of gas, which is inhaled nitric oxide, which is used for pulmonary hypertension in newborns. So these newborn babies that are born and can't oxygenate their blood, they're hypoxic, and they turn almost black because they can't oxygenate their blood. And with this drug, inhaled nitric oxide, they turn pink. They oxygenate their blood in a matter of minutes. So it's a life-saving drug. So we ended up, this little tiny company in Seattle ended up buying that company, the inhaled nitric oxide company, as like a guppy swallowing the whale. And we created the new Icaria, which now has 450 people and about 250 million in revenues, and is a leader in critical care with many interesting drugs, drug trials in the pipeline, and a great success story.